Good morning. How is everyone? I have to share a story. I was getting dressed this morning, and it's hit me a few times before when I have the privilege of speaking from time to time, and it dawned on me. I spent 20 years of my life in healthcare, and Johnson & Johnson to other companies, and I eventually became a president of about a $2.5 billion pharmaceutical company. We took it public and we sold it. And all during that time, and all during the growth of our company, the success we had, not a single person or a single company or a single church ever asked me to come and speak to them. All of a sudden, I cook a little bit of barbecue, and now I speak about twice a week. You know, it's funny. I guess I should have figured that out a long time ago, huh? Well, I don't. I love speaking, and that was a promise that I made when my wife and I decided to take this journey together. That whenever we had the opportunity to share the testimony, the answer would always be yes. And little did I know back then, that meant about 2 or 3 times a week. But it's a great chance to share what God has done in our lives and just how much He's moved us in this journey. And it truly has been a journey. And by definition of a journey, it means that you're moving from the place that you are today to somewhere new. And it's like when you talk about your spirit journey, or when you're finding Jesus and you're going down that path with Him. If you're doing the same things that you were before, I really would challenge, are you truly taking those steps? Well, a little bit of history before I get into the whole story of it. I grew up in Jacksonville, and I'm the oldest of 4. Went to school up in Tallahassee, and then after I graduated school, I moved out to Dallas. And I lived there, and this is back in the early or late 80s. And I always say I moved out to Texas, and I met the 2 loves of my life. My wife, Monica, and Brisket. and I brought both of them back with me. And I'll never forget, that when I walked into some of the smokehouses that are back in Texas, I found for the first time, a different style of barbecue than I'd ever seen before growing up here in Florida. And I just remember the feeling that I had of how amazing it was, not just from the taste perspective, but from the business perspective. And for years, as she and I were dating and driving back and forth, I would just go on and on about talking, oh, we need to open this smokehouse in Florida, and we need to do this, and I can cook it like this. And granted, I'd never cooked before. Okay, I'm not a trained chef, and I just always loved to do this, but I loved the idea about it. And I just would go on and on. And God bless her, the to-be new wife, she, I remember her patting me on the knee and saying to me, honey, why don't we just concentrate on healthcare, get a nice solid job, we'll get an income and build a family. And she was right, and we went down that path. Well, the reason that I share that part of the story, because I believe that there's 3 very important things that help drive a leader. Okay? And the first one is passion. Okay? And I very much believe that when we're all created, right, by God, and it talks about it, we're all given very specific gifts. Right? And you can call them gifts, you can call them purposes, you can call them calling. It doesn't really matter. But when we were young, it's easy to identify what we're passionate about because there's no inhibitions, there's no restrictions whatsoever. And I talk to different men and different women today, and they say, well, I really just don't know what my calling is, what my purpose is. And so many people get caught up in the word calling and the definition of it. I say simply, close your eyes. I said, what would you like to be doing? What inspires you? What gets you excited? And take away all the inhibitions of salary and mortgage and everything else is there. Now the answer, it can't be sitting on a beach. It has to be productive. You got to be actually making income. You got to be doing something, okay? And it's amazing the things that come from their heart. I want to be a coach. I want to teach kids. I'd love to paint. And then the answer that I give them, that question that I pose back to them, what's stopping you from doing it? And it's amazing, the similarity in the answers, you can almost script it. Well, I have a mortgage, I have a family, cars, I'm too old, I can't make this change, it's too risky, okay? I'll tell you what, I made this crazy change when I was, I think, 44, 45, okay? Major career changes is very similar, it's very attuned to the Bible. Think about it, before Jesus became a missionary, he was a carpenter, okay? he throws everything away and he goes into something completely different. What's the one thing that holds us back from stepping into that passion? Okay? Knowing that when we're in our passion, and I really believe this, when you're doing what you were created to do, success comes easily. Okay? Happiness comes easily. And it may be a different definition of success versus the worldly terms, but you're doing what comes natural to you and what excites your heart. And I can promise you this, because when I was growing up, my father left us when I was a freshman in college, and I had to come home from college and figure out what I was going to do with my life, because when he left also, all the money for college was gone too. And had to make a decision at that point, which direction I'm going to go in my life. Well, I said, well, started a painting company. Not that I knew how to paint, but it was something I could do to make money. And the funny thing was, by the end of that summer, I had 12 gentlemen working with me, and we were painting churches, of all things. And the scary thing was, we were all 17 and 18 years old on 5 stories of scaffolding with no insurance and no idea exactly what we were doing. But it helped bridge that gap. And it helped teach me, too, that you have to push through sometimes, regardless of what the situations were. Someone told me one time that the circumstances that you focus on become the chains that bind you. And I very much believe that. And your outlook on life and how you take on challenges and how you view challenges very much determines not only the outcome of that situation, but really begins to define you. And when you're in a leadership situation, ultimately it defines your organization as well. So when you step into what that passion is, success will follow it, but you have to overcome one thing. Okay? That question I posed to them, why don't you do this? All those answers came back to one common denominator: fear. Fear. And I hear it when I talk to different people. Well, I'm concerned about this, or I'm scared about failure. I'm scared about losing. I have school and the kids and all of this. I'll tell you what, somebody brought a passage to me. I believe it's 2 Timothy 1:4, if I recall correctly. For God did not give us a spirit of fear, but one of strength, and there's different interpretations of it, and perseverance, and He gives us what we need to get through any situation. Now, in fact, I believe He's given it to us long before we even face that situation, but He's also given us the choice to call upon that. It's already inherent inside of us. He's already equipped us, He's already armed us, and it's like that on and off switch that we have to turn to Him to turn those tools on. And as much as I talk about this, and I'm going to share the peril that we went through to open the store, I forget that. And how easy it is to get caught into the day-to-day operations and the running the business, and you forget how much empowerment comes by simply turning back to God and asking Him for the smallest of things. How do I do this decision? Should we hire this person? What's the direction you want me to take? And I do find so much reprieve and success when I use that discipline to actually do it. So I hear people say it's fear. And I really have come to believe that fear is the tangible weapon of the enemy. Just like love is a tangible weapon of God. And love always wins, as long as we listen to it. There's an old Indian story about a grandfather talking to his son, and he's talking about the 2 wolves that live inside of him. And then one wolf consumes, and it eats everything, and it's dark, and it brings out the worst in us. There's another wolf of equal, that's positive, and it gives, and it creates, and it builds, and they're constantly in battle with each other. And the grandson asked the grandfather, he said, well, Grandpa, which one wins? He says, whichever one you feed. And it's very, very, very much the truth. What you believe in, okay, what you lean into defines who you are. Okay? I once read, too, that we tend to reduce God to the size of our biggest problem. If we're saying this problem is too big, I can't overcome it, That's saying that my God can't overcome this problem. You know, I love it. I believe it's in Philippians where it talks about bringing your prayers with thanksgiving to God and presenting it to Him. You know what I love about that the most is the back half of that passage where it talks about, and you pray that the peace of God that transcends all understanding is granted to you. What's interesting about that, it's not saying that He's going to say yes to your prayers. He's not saying, I'm going to grant it to you. He's going to give you the peace to understand at the end of the day, this is what I'm giving to you, and just trust me, there's a purpose, of reason why I'm giving this to you. So my encouragement to so many people, you know, and you can tell that the people in your congregation, are they alive in what they're doing? Do they love it? You know, or they just they going through it on a day-to-day basis? There's a difference, I believe, between work and a career. You know, work you have to do because you get paid because it's laborious. You know, a career very much to me is very similar to a calling. When you're doing it, you love to do it. I work harder now, longer now than I ever did, like in the healthcare days, and I can't get enough of it. There's not enough minutes of the day because I love it, and I love my team, and I love every single bit about it. And you know what's really interesting too is as many hours as I'm working, I've never had a closer family relationship either. Which you would think would be the opposite, but it's not, I believe, because God calls us to be a family. God calls us to be a provider and a husband and a wife. You know, and if we're doing what God has asked us to do, He's going to protect that unity in the process of it. And sure enough, my wife not only has been my partner in this, but she has been so much a strength to me when we were going through so many of the trials. And that's number 2. That's the second P, is perseverance. And you understand what your passion is. And I share the story of how we used to drive back and forth from Texas we've been married 25 years now, 20-something years ago, and I talked about this all the time, okay? That passion was in me, okay? When I was a child cooking, that passion was in me. But what happened? You know, I go down the path most of us do. I got a job, okay? I started incurring debt. I raised a family. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. But what it was doing was putting layers in between me and where my heart was, what my passion really was, okay? It doesn't mean that ever went away, because I cooked all the time in my backyard, okay? And any chance I had, you know, I was experimenting with food, but it wasn't what I was doing on a daily basis. And I knew I wasn't in the right place when I became the president of this big company. Here, everything that I ever worked for and overcame to get here, and it was empty. I was not alive. Part of it, I believe, that I came to learn was the appeal was the path there, the challenge to get there. And then once I got there, you know, that stimulation, that challenge, I realized this is not where I'm supposed to be. This is not what I want to be doing. You know, there's a theological, or the philosopher, I think his name is Kirkendall, and he said that you live your life moving forward, but you tend to understand your life looking backward. And things that happen to us, we don't necessarily, I certainly don't, always understand or appreciate them when they do, but that peace that transcends all understanding, I take for granted. Okay, there's a reason for this. Okay. I grew up in a family, we went to church. Okay. We went to church you know, every weekend, but I can't say we had that personal relationship with Christ, okay? And with God specifically as my Father. Okay? It was back in 2004, and I'm in the middle of my career. I get invited to, it was called golf at the time. I believe it's called Life Work Leadership today. And it was in 2004, in this class, the very opening session of it, it talked about the role of God as your Father. And because of what happened, that the hole that existed in my life with the absence of my father, it nailed me. It knocked me right in between my eyes, and I'd never been so shaken up emotionally as that. And I realized how big that hole was, and that it was being filled by true Father's love. I took that step and then started really wanting to learn more about the Bible. Okay. That step had to happen in order to set up the next step. Okay. And I didn't recognize what was going on. And as I tell you this story, I use the analogy of a tapestry. You ever seen, you know, these beautiful big tapestries, and you never look on the back of the tapestry? Okay. You can't make out what the picture is. You know, there's all kind of yarn and wires going all over the place. Well, you know, I believe that's what we see. You know, we see all these pieces going in. It doesn't make sense. But on the side of the tapestry where God is, it's a beautiful picture. He knows exactly why everything is woven the way that it is. I had to take that step, and it was back in 2004. And at the time, I'm the head of our oncology department. Hi there. Which is our cancer treatment department, our pharmacy. And I get a phone call in the office. Okay. Now, the phone call came straight to my desk, right, which is very awkward, because it's usually screened by my assistant, and then it comes in, and she'll pass along to me. So the phone rings direct, and I pick it up, and I know it wasn't a mistaken phone call, because the part that I remember distinctly was Mr. Rivers. Mr. Rivers, it was a lady. She was crying, and she was so upset. She said, I'm so sorry to hear about your daughter. And my daughter's Cameron in kindergarten at the time. And I said, well, what's wrong with my daughter? She says, well, her tumor, her terminal brain tumor. Now, I knew it wasn't my daughter, thank you. I was in touch as a father, even back then, to a degree. But from the time that I hung up the phone with her, okay, and I reached my wife, Monica, it took me about 20 minutes. Even though I was in the cancer treatment business, this was the first time I was in the shoes of a parent and saw it from that perspective of a child going through cancer. And I'll tell you what, it scared the daylights out of me. You know, I had, even though it wasn't my daughter, I had this, you know, such a feeling of, well, what do you do? There's a helplessness that's there. Well, I got in touch with Monica, and of course it wasn't Cameron, but I told her the story of this, okay? And what's really awkward is many times as I've told this story, as many times as it's been in print, this is back in 2004, to this day we still don't know who the caller was, okay? And to show you how odd it was, we sought out. I told Monica, we're going to find out who this family is, okay? Who this little girl is. She did not go to the school with Cameron. Okay, she wasn't in class with Cameron. She didn't go to the same school with Cameron. She didn't go to the same church. We didn't live in the same neighborhood. There was no connection in social circles whatsoever. It was a complete random mistaken phone call that came to me. But I know it wasn't mistaken because I remember Mr. Rivers, Mr. Rivers. Okay. Well, it moved me. I said, we're going to find out who this family is. There's a reason that this call came to me. Still not understanding everything that's in works here. Okay. We find out they go to St. Mary Magdalene. I call the priest there, introduce myself. Now what's really funny is that I'm approaching this from a worldly terms, okay? And I said, Father Charlie, I'm the head of the oncology department of this national pharmacy, and we've got care that we can help provide, and we can help line up with indigent care product and all these things. I said, would it be possible, could I meet this family? And he says, well, certainly. You know, come after Mass, and I'll introduce you, okay? Now here's a funny thing. You know, up until this point, all these years with Johnson & Johnson, I was in charge of what's called M&A, mergers and acquisitions, and BD, business development. So I created companies, or I led negotiations to buy companies, okay? Everything is calculated, okay? You don't go to the table unless you have analyzed every outcome, and if you know if they're going to say this is the direction we're going to go. It's very controlled environment. Well, that's the person that I had become. And if you had seen me back then, you know, I'm actually very dressed up today. Usually I'm in shorts, but I thought I'd dress nice for you guys. But my shirts were triple pressed. My hair was cut, always in a tie. It was a very controlled environment, okay, that I was in. So here we are. We're walking up the vestibule, okay, after church, And this beautiful family is walking toward us, okay? And it's the husband and wife, and these 3 beautiful girls, okay? And the one in the middle was clearly going through cancer treatment. You know? And my wife turns to me, and as we're only about 20 feet away, and she says, "What are you going to say to them?" And I stopped, and it was one of the first times in our marriage, first of many to come, I said to her, "I don't know." Okay? The significance of that, you know, I had listened to my heart, okay, and taken this step. I hadn't calculated, I hadn't planned it. You know, the word heart is used 892 times in the Bible, okay? It's third only to God and to Lord. I think there's a reason God talks to us. He stirs our heart. How much I would love for that booming voice, do this, you know, but it's not. It's that, you know, it's that feeling that you get inside. And she just looked at me. She says, "You don't know?" And I didn't. I remember we embraced the family and told John, you know, I wanted to help him. And what was really silly now, as I look back on it, for the next couple of weeks, I started pouring, you know, worldly things into them. I helped them get care and drugs and all these things. And all of a sudden, one day, I'm sitting at my desk, and I realized, you know, they don't need more drugs. They don't need more pharmacists and nurses. They need money. I know what they're going through. So the father's name was John. I called John. I said, "Hey, John," I said, "let me write you a check. I know what you're going through." And he wouldn't have anything to do with it. And we argued for about 20 minutes, and I lost the argument, and so I hung up. And then I felt it. I really felt it. Pick up the phone and call back. All right? So I pick up the phone and call. I didn't know what I was going to say. Honest to goodness. I said, "Hey, John, it's me." And he says, "Yeah, I know. I just told you no." I said, "I appreciate that." I said, "Hey, how about if we host honest to goodness, I didn't know I was even saying this. What if we host a cookout at your church for Megan," that was his daughter, "and you don't have to do anything. It's a fundraiser. It's a celebration of her life. And you just invite your friends." I said, "I'll take care of the food. I'll take care of the invites. We'll get everything taken care of." And he called back after he talked to Josie, and he said, "Okay, now, here's the deal, though, okay? I had always cooked in my backyard. You know, all my travels, it was always around barbecue places around the country, and I would schedule my meetings around it, and I come home and I experiment. The most I'd cook for in my backyard was maybe 30 people, maybe 40 people, you know, at football games and stuff like that, and it always wasn't good. I can tell you, it didn't always come out the way that I liked it to be, right? He calls back and he says, "Yes." And he said, the event was 10 days later, okay? Now I'm in my job, right? I'm full-time. 450 people RSVP. We didn't have the equipment, we didn't have the know-how, didn't have the time, didn't have the fun. How in the world were we going to do this? But it was amazing. When I said yes to that nudge, God provided. And there is a correlation between obedience and blessing. You know? And I'm going to go off on a tangent in just a little bit when we finish this story, right? So the event comes, and I still say to this day, it's by the grace of God that we raised a lot of money for this beautiful little girl. You know, we fed all these wonderful people, and nobody got sick. In the process of it. That correlation, a passage just came to heart. It talks about in Genesis when God's talking to Abram at the time, and he's telling Abram, if you think about it, all these blessings he's going to pour into him. You know, you're the father of nations, and who you bless will be blessed, and your descendants will be blessed, and on and on. And that's exciting, right? But if you read the line right before it, okay, what does God say to him? I want you to leave your father's house, leave your country, leave your people, and go to a country that I'll tell you about later. Pack up and just head in that direction, okay? There's that correlation. You obey, and here's all the blessings I'm going to give you, okay? And we got into a theological debate one time. Well, does that mean that God doesn't give you blessings if you don't obey? And I said, well, the analogy that comes to heart for me is like a father, okay? You have our mother. You have a child, and you've got all these blessings that even before they were born, you have built up, and your intent is to give them these treasures and these blessings, okay, along with your love, okay? Now, that child has to make a decision, multiple decisions in their life. Well, if they make the wrong decisions and end up incarcerated, okay, in jail, those treasures don't go away, that love doesn't go away, but their ability to enjoy those treasures, they have separated themselves from the blessings that you had intended. All right? They never lose your love, but they just can't necessarily enjoy those treasures that you have built up for them because of the choices that they made in their life. So I very much believe that those blessings are there. I believe that those talents are given to us. I believe that that purpose and that calling is long determined before we were born, that it's up to us to turn to them, to put our faith into God, and sometimes it does mean a big change. One caution that I give folks, don't use this as a career change, as an out. God tells us to persevere, and God tells us to work. And there is very much, with the calling I believe that God gives us is to follow His Word, okay? And you can follow that Word in the workplace that you're in today. It's just using whatever platform that you're doing to do His will. And I'm not trained, so I can't say for sure, but I believe that's really what He's saying to us. Okay, now, once you say yes, all right, I'm going to follow my passion, I'm going to do this, I'm all in, okay, then it's going to get tough. You know why? Because now you're leaning into what God wants you to do. And only good is going to come from that. And that means only Satan's going to step in there now. He's getting concerned. He doesn't want you to be there. He doesn't want you to be happy, because you know what? If you start doing what God intended you to do, that means you're going to affect an awful lot of people. And He doesn't want that at all. So he gets very active. So I step into this thing. Things happen. We sell our company. I'm growing in my faith. I have a 2-year earn-out, which means I have to stay with the company for 2 years before I get my final payout in this, okay? And during that 2 years, a lot of things happen, and we begin to separate heart spiritually from the company itself. And I'll never forget, you know, the end of my contract was in March. Okay, and this is back in 2007. It's January, and my boss at the time was down from St. Louis, and she's talking to me, and she's talking about different options of what I can do. I can continue, I can renew my contract, I can move to St. Louis, I can take on different roles within the company, so and so. And you ever talk to somebody and you're looking at them right in the eye, and you know their mouth is moving, and you're not, none of it is registering whatsoever. And I just remember I was trying to listen hard, and I was praying. And I look back at my prayer journal, you know, the weeks leading up to that. What's really funny is what I wrote in my prayer journal was, dear God, you know, I prayed for a change, okay, in career to better line up to what His will was. Well, I didn't realize, I was thinking, you know, maybe I'll go to Genentech, or maybe I'll go to Amgen or Roche or somebody like this. I didn't realize He was going to take it very little and change my entire career. And I'm sitting there listening to her, and I knew it wasn't right. And I felt it in my heart, 2 words, you know, just trust me. And I felt it so pronounced, I challenged it. And I, trust you, what? Just trust me. All right. And I looked at her, and I said, I've already made up my mind. And this is 3 months in advance. She says, oh, great, that makes it easy. What would you like to do? I'm going to leave. I'm going to retire. And that was not the answer she was expecting by any means. And about 30 minutes later, as I'm driving home from at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I call my wife, and she's like, where are you? I said, I'm in the car. I didn't think you were traveling today. I'm not, I'm coming home. And I'd never come home in the afternoon. She says, what did you do? And I told her, I said, I decided I was going to retire today. And she asked that question, because this is 2007. And we were just building a brand new house and all this, and increasing our debt and doing all those silly things like that. And she asked that question again, what are you going to do? You know what I said the second time? I don't know. But it was the truth. I really didn't. All I knew is that I felt this in my heart. And I didn't know what was going to happen, and I didn't know what was ahead. And I certainly didn't know what was coming up in the financial horizon in 2008 and 2009. Okay. So we take this step, we start a consulting company, and it all came to put, it was all fine, okay? And while I was doing this, we started what was called our barbecue ministry. That event that we did for little Megan, the girl with cancer, it spurred something in my heart. And what it spurred was a love of cooking and using this passion and this talent to help people. And so for the next 4 years after that, anytime a school or church or a ministry would call and need money, or was trying to do a fundraiser, I would bring out the smoker. And I would cook for them on the weekends. And I did it more and more and more. Truett Cathy told me one time, he said, there's 3 things you can give to people: your time, your talent, and your resources. He said the easiest of those is your resources. He says if you truly care about them, give them your time. Share your talents. You want to get somebody off the phone? Write them a check. Get them out of your office? That's the easy way to do it. Okay? You really want to help them grow? Come and you talk to them and you spend time and you pour into them. Right? So we decided, when all these charities and organizations call, we're not going to try them check. We're going to offer to do this cookout for them. Now it grew and it grew. And Monica would contend, you're only doing this because you can get bigger smokers over the years. And there was a truth to that, but I certainly did love it. I was so alive on the weekends when we were doing this. And when I retired, I had more time. So we began to do more and more of it. Matter of fact, the last year, we did all of it out of the garage. The last year, we fed estimated 70,000 people from our garage. And we did this from 2004 on. We never did it commercially. People tell me I used to be a caterer and this and that. Like, no, we didn't. It was a ministry. We did it just as a love. Now, one of the hardest things to come together was the sauce recipe. I made all of our recipes and put everything together, and I was really anal about it. I had Excel spreadsheets, and every tab on the bottom was ribs and chicken and brisket, and every time I would make it, I would log the difference in the cooking time and the sauces and the rubs and the woods, until I locked down every single one of them. Well, the one that was just bugging me was sauce, because there is such a big difference between cooking on a grill and making a dang sauce. And and all I would do is, the way I taught myself is I'd come home every night and I'd watch Paula Deen on TV, and I would take Paula Deen, and then that weekend I would just pour through these, and I would just cook, just making it and just trial and error the whole time. I finally got to cook with her last month, and I'll tell you what, I was just like a kid. I was so excited to meet her, and I told her how she got me into this business. She says to me, she says, honey, don't you blame me for getting in this crazy business. And I thought, you're right. Okay. So I make the sauce, right? I'm all excited about it. As my wife says, it's 2 years of bad sauce tasting in the house. And I get it bottled, and there was a great challenge to that. And I got this little teeny company up in Sanford to agree to make it for me. Getting it bottled is a big deal, all right? And they don't make it in small batches. Well, she was kind enough to make a half load for me, okay? Now, a half load is 92 cases of a dozen bottles each. Okay, now this is just playing, okay, in the garage. So I'll never forget, I'm coming back down I-4, and I couldn't afford plastic back then, so it was all glass, and I had a little Ford Explorer, and the back of the truck is weighed down like that because it's so heavy. Now this is August of 2008, okay? So you know how hot it is. My poor wife is helping me unload all these cases of sauce from my truck, and we're putting it in the garage. And if you can imagine, the entire back wall of the garage is covered in cases of my barbecue sauce with my name, 4 Rivers coming out at us. Now, here's the difference in perspective, okay? I'm looking at it, I am just as proud as can be, okay? I look over at her, she's drenching sweat, and she hits me, she says, what are you going to do with all this sauce? Guess what I said? The third time. I don't know. That's right. Okay, here's what's really cool. From that August to that December, 100% of it was gone. Wow. Sold. And I gave away about 10% or so, okay? But it was crazy. It was crazy. I would fly out to Genentech or California, and I'd put cases in my trunk. knowing that when I came back to town, I'd have all these voicemails from this bank downtown or this law firm, and hey, I had your sauce at this party this weekend. How can I get some? And it just kept going out and going out. And it was like, wow, this is amazing. You know, stepping into that calling, stepping into that passion, allowing God to open up those doors. Okay? So I said to myself, well, this is kind of neat. Oh, and by the way, we picked up Fenway Park as a customer up in Boston, right? And this is a great model. You know, I got it manufactured up here in DeLand. I get a phone call from Boston, and they say, hey, I need a pallet load of sauce. I said, great. I call DeLand. They make it. They send it. I get a check from Boston, and I send, you know, I cut a check over here. Like, this is awesome. I don't have to do anything. I don't have any capital invested. What a great model. I said, well, I think we should bottle our own. Plus, we were doing so much cooking in the garage, we really needed to get into a licensed facility. And that's the truth. But also the truth is, too, we make it such a mess. I said, you get out of the house with all this cooking. So we were about to get a little warehouse up in Altamont Springs. And I drove by, I was coming back, literally with the lease in my hand, and we drove by Fairbanks, and there's this little old Just Breaks. It was all beaten up. It was in awful, awful shape, and had a big for lease sign out front. And I don't know what it was. I pulled in, and called the landlord right then, and we made a deal within 5 minutes. And I walked away, and I'm like, what just happened? You know, part of my rationale was, I live in Winter Park. I'm going to invest money and to build something up. Let's fix up this area that's here. Okay. Well, gosh, little did I know what was going to happen there. Okay? It was never intended to be a restaurant. And for you guys, for all of y'all who have been in there, you know I didn't build it as a restaurant. You know, the little teeny showroom that you went in to pay for your tires was about this big. Okay, and it was intended just to be a square commissary. And my contractor standing in, and he says, you want us to take these walls out? And I said, tell you what, leave the walls in. We'll put little hot wells, and the food we have left over from our ministry on the weekend, we'll put out just in case anybody wants to come in and buy it. Right? We never thought people were going to come in like they did. Well, this thing starts building, right? Okay, and this is now late 2008. Okay, now the markets start crashing. Okay, well, a few things happen. This build out that was only supposed to be $188,000 and take 3 months. Okay, I'm in well north of $500,000 now. I'm well into approaching 6 months. My contractor, bless his heart, is in a cash flow situation. He stops working. He's gone. Okay, I'm sitting on this enigma on Fairbanks. I'm not a restaurateur. Okay, I can build pharmacies, but I have no idea what I'm doing with this. Everything is falling apart. Okay, and oh, by the way, as I'm pouring more time into this, means I'm reducing the number of clients I have on the consulting side. So markets are going down, my income level's gone down, all the discretionary funds that I had set aside are now, they're all almost being used completely, okay? And oh, by the way, all these blessings that we got from retirement, from selling the company, I thought I did the right things and put them in IRAs, and I don't know if you guys remember what happened back then. They're all down 15, 60%. Oh, we built this big, beautiful house, right? That's down. I can't even sell the house. We were in a financial crunch for the first time in almost 20 years. Both my wife and I paid for our school, paid for our college, paid for our marriage. First apartment we ever had was only $325 a month, and we couldn't afford it. Okay, we knew what that lifestyle was like. Okay, and here we are now, like questioning how in the world did we get back here? Okay, and oh, by the way, okay, this thing is starting to get word out that it's a barbecue place, right? Now all these different experts in the industry are coming in, and they're lending their advice of what I should be doing. And then I tell them what my model is. I'm going to be serving brisket, and I'm going to be serving it Texas style on a tray. Oh, you're going to fail. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Barbecue is regionalized. Didn't you see how Smoky Bones just closed? You can't bring, this is a pork area. You have to serve pulled pork. You have to serve it. You can't do this. They won't sit outside. People were telling me why I was going to fail over. I was on the wrong side of the road, serving the wrong thing, over and over and over. Honest to goodness, true story. I'm standing out in front of this enigma one time, and I'm just looking at it, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And a complete stranger pulls up in the car and tells me what an idiot I am and how I'm going to fail at this, okay? Honest to goodness. Honest to goodness. And I even had my best friends, from a perspective of true heart and sincerity, questioning, what are you doing, okay? So here I am in the midst of not knowing, okay? I've only got about 30 days of cash left, okay? And so we're going to have to make some very tough decisions, right? And I don't know the outcome. I don't know how I'm going to fix this thing, right? All of a sudden I get a phone call from my old boss, right? And he says, hey John, he said he started a investment firm. We're buying 3 pharmacies around the country, and we're going to headquarter them right here in Orlando. And we'd like to know if you'd like to be considered for the CEO position. Okay? And I know what this means. I know the income. I know how to do this job. You know, this is easy. Okay? And I know what it means long term when we sell these companies. Okay? And here I am over here. I don't know this path. I don't even know a way out of where I'm at today. And at first, it seemed like a blessing, right? But then I went back and thank goodness for the strength of my wife and her faith. You know, we talked it through, and we said, you know what? God has led us so much down this path. You know, there's a reason for it right now. And we made the decision not to take this for 2 purposes. You know, one, all the things that we were scared about losing, they were all worldly possessions. They're the house and the car and the country club and the private schools. You know, like I said before, we grew up without that. That was a fine life. You know, happiness is not associated with any of those things. And the second reason, I have 2 children, okay, 2 teenagers, and I so much believe in my heart, it was more important for them to see that you have faith in God, to follow your dreams and your passions, even to fail at it, versus showing them I don't even have the courage and the faith to take that step. So I called him up, and we passed on the gracious offer. He's also my spiritual mentor, so we understood, okay? The very next week, and we didn't know the answer, okay? 2 things happened, right? We're coming back we went to the beach just to cool off a little bit. Right, I'm in my truck and we got Bluetooth, okay? And I get back in my truck and here's a phone. I got a message from a 404 phone number. It's Atlanta. And I said, who in the world's calling me from Atlanta? Right? So I hit it. And, Mr. Rivers, this is Dan Cathy. I work at Chick-fil-A. I'm looking at it. You don't work at Chick-fil-A. You own Chick-fil-A. He says, I just had your brisket and your sauce, and it's the best thing I've ever had. I don't know you. You don't know me. I just want to help you any way I can. Mm-hmm. Right? He gives me his name, his phone number, his home phone number. I mean, from where? I'm thinking, how in the world? I'm not from this industry. He doesn't know who I am. How does he reach out and do this? Okay. Next thing. Okay. 2 days later, right? I get a phone call from a buddy of mine. Okay, who's in a Bible study up in Longwood. Okay, and they drive down Fairbanks to go to this Bible study. Okay, well, one of the guys who drives by it he's a contractor. Okay, he's got 2 accounts in the city, Disney and SeaWorld. Okay, he does big deals. His name is Brad. Okay, well, Brad's in this Bible study with my buddy, and he goes by the store. And he goes to Bible study. And he says, I don't know what is moving me, but I know this guy. He didn't know who I was, and he didn't know that my friend Kurt even knew me. He says, but this place is in trouble. I know this guy is in trouble, and I just feel stirring in my heart. I want to help him. I want to reach out. So Kurt says, yeah, he's my buddy, and yes, he's in big trouble. He has no idea what he's doing. Okay? Okay, that week, Brad steps into my life. Less than 30 days later, he gets us open, okay? Gets us into CO, and he never took a penny for any of that work, okay? God put him into that, and you see what happened? It was having faith, and I stayed here. Even in the adversity, okay? Even when I thought there was an out and something that was put in front of me, well, you know what happened? With my buddy Steve and the conglomerate and the 3 pharmacies, they never came together. Never came together. The purchase never went through. Had I gone that route, I'd have been out. Even though it seemed like a blessing, I knew that in my heart that's not what I wanted to be doing. He gets us open. Dan Cathy helps me put together a little pro forma because I felt like I needed one. And I never forget, Dan, I said, what kind of revenue should we be doing in this place? And because it's only 1,300 square feet, this place was small. And he says, well, John, he said, if you do, he helped me a lot, not just from this, but he said, if you do about $1,500 a day, you'd be doing about market average. He says, you do about $2,000 a day, you'd be well ahead of the market, you'd be doing great. But we opened up in October 26th in 2009. We had zero money left. We had every piece of used equipment you can imagine. There were only 12 employees. 2 of them were my wife and I. I was working on cutting and she was working on the cash register. And we didn't advertise. We didn't do anything. We just opened the door. And that first day, we had a line and we did $3,500. In the history, that's still our lowest day we've ever had as a company. And God just kept pouring in and pouring in. And there's no rationale behind it. We're on the wrong side of the street. We're serving the wrong meat. We're making people wait in line over and over and over. And to me, people say, well, you're so happy about your success, and what do you attribute it to? And I say, if you're within market boundaries and you're performing well, you feel pretty good about yourself. Okay? But when you're so far outside of market boundaries, it's really hard for you to take the credit for that. It's really easy to see God's presence in it. And I could tell you story after story after story of how he showed up over and over and over again, but I know my time is up here. But there's so much credence into leaning into God, following what your heart and your passion is, and things will certainly happen when you do. And I've really come to appreciate that perhaps God puts those biggest challenges in front of us so that we can truly experience just how strong his love and his might is in our life if we just say yes to it. I did none of my intended presentation, but I will leave you with... Yes, there's a third one. If you guys don't mind going over, it's purpose. It's passion, perseverance, and purpose. And it was true of Kathy on this one too. He said, John, you're going to make a decision in your life whether you want to be successful. Okay? And success is defined by a lot of things. Okay? It's your title, it's your car, it's how much money you make, how big the house is. Okay? Or you're going to be significant. Okay? And significant means making an impact in people's lives. Okay? And it's not saying you can't have a big house and the cars and all that, but that's not what and you don't allow it to define you. And it's just like you run that business. You run that business well, and you've got to have structure around it. And that P&L is in place, okay, and it's a great measurement tool, but it's not what defines your business. You use it as a measurement tool, strictly as that. Okay, it doesn't define what you do. Being significant means simply making an impact on people's lives. And we have over 300 employees now. And what I teach them is how little it takes to make an impact, to make somebody's day, make them feel good, look them in the eye, use their name, tell them they look good today, tell them they're doing a good job, help them pick up something, give them it means it takes so little, but it does require an intent. And that intent starts in your heart. And I believe that giving spirit, okay, is like a muscle. You can't just wake up one morning and say, I'm going to do all this, okay? You build into it. You work it over and over. You do a little bit, and it gets stronger. And then before long, it's what defines you. It's natural when people ask that. You start looking for the opportunity to give and to pour into other people because it's in your DNA. And to this day, we have never lost our touch and our roots as a ministry. To this day, we have still never paid for traditional advertising. We're not in papers and advertising and coupons and all that stuff. Okay? We take that money instead and we pour it back into the community. Okay? And the intentionality behind that, you can't just say, okay, we're going to do this, because it won't happen. It falls to the wayside. I have a full-time employee, and her name is Brooke. And when I hired her, I said, here's your budget. And we set aside a budget per store. And last year, I think it came like to $250,000 that went back into the community. Okay? And she was so proud that after the first month, she came to me and she says, Mr. Rivers, she says, I came in under budget. Whatever it was, a couple $1,000s. And I sat her down and I said, honey, I said, your job is twofold. To make sure that we spend that money, it's just like tithing. Okay? You make sure that we spend it on the right people in the right ways. She loves her job now. She says, I got the greatest job in the world. Let's go out and we make it intentional that we put it back into the community. And there's a whole business side to that. But you don't support the people around you, it's very, very difficult to thrive in that community. That's a lot more important than an advertisement. Okay? Now can I give my last little statement? Okay. Well, thank you for reminding me of that. This is one of my favorite quotes, and it came from Nelson Mandela in his acceptance speech. And it says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure and capable of doing all that we are called to do. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us the most. I thank each one of y'all for having me here today, and I pray you listen to your heart, and listen to God talking to you, and have the courage to do what He asks you to do. Thank y'all.